inpatient services. We need dialysis units. We need incubators for babies. We need maternity services, labor and delivery services. We need public health organizations that can deliver immunization programs. We need a lot of engineering and social infrastructure to deliver clean water, sewage disposal. We need agricultural systems that can deliver food to nourish our patients, ourselves. We need opportunities for people to recover or cope with the illnesses they have or recover from the injuries that they have. What does that involve? It involves all kinds of supplies. It involves healing relationships, healing supports. It involves all kinds of infrastructure. And again, it involves nutrition. It requires shelter, basic shelter. These are things that, in spite of, I complain, as everybody does, about the long emergency waits here in Belleville and our local emerge departments, shortages of family docs. So many thousands of people in our community right here are unable to find a nurse practitioner or a family doctor to take on their care. These are incredibly important issues. We have all kinds of disparities within the healthcare system. And we have disparities in our society generally that lead to disparities in health. Why are so many people so poor when some people are so rich? And I consider myself one of the rich ones. We need systems that share the wealth in a much more equitable way, give everyone a chance to flourish in our society. We have these difficulties here, but they are nothing like what is being faced by the people who live and are being injured, being orphaned, and dying in Gaza every day right now. As a healthcare provider, as a physician here, you can feel very helpless when you watch and hear about what's going on across the world. We can do our things like Belleville Justice and Peace does a protest every Sunday afternoon at Bell in Front. People are welcome to come. We're doing these events. We try to communicate with our members of parliament. I know people are engaged in boycotts and all kinds of different things. And I think all of these things are important. I think being together and sharing our feelings and our horror basically is very important. Megan, just to give an idea, do you mind putting up a map? Or is it possible to expand that? This is Belleville. And sorry about my tremor. There is Trenton, Belleville, Marysville, Corbyville up here. Sorry, get away from mine. Now, can you transpose a map of Gaza? Okay, this is the same scale. Thanks to my son Nico for doing this. Marysville would be about here, Trenton about here, Belleville in the middle. Okay, that's how big it is. Corbyville, 401, right here. Okay, so in this space, we maybe right now have maybe 200,000 people. There's 55,000 people in Belleville. Okay, to get the number of people in Gaza, I want you to imagine taking everybody from the island of Montreal. That's about 1.8 million people. Everyone from the island of Montreal, moving them in here. Okay, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people living here. We're still going to have some agricultural land, amazingly, but we're going to have a lot of apartment buildings. We're going to have a lot of people living very, very closely and intensely together. A lot of hospitals close together, universities, schools, all of these things close together in that area. Okay, can you picture that? So when we hear about the bombing and destruction and people being displaced, having to move around, having to walk with their children and their goods and whatever from northern Gaza, you know, we've turned this sideways, right? Northern Gaza, down here, people moving over and over and over. This is the area that we're talking about. So it seems like a small area, but if you're thinking about walking and moving all your stuff, okay, if you're moving from Trenton to Belleville or Shannonville, that's pretty far just to be walking and lugging your stuff and finding a place. In Gaza, all this water is not fresh water, it's salt water. It needs to be desalinated if anybody's going to drink it. In Belleville, we have all this fresh water. Lucky us, right? Anyways, I just wanted to put these maps up just to give us an idea in our minds of what we're dealing with. Okay, I'm going to now introduce Mesa, who's been patiently waiting. I really do want our speakers who have been incredibly involved in the issues and have spent time working in Gaza to get most of our time this morning. Mesa began her career as a physiotherapist, working in community programs in the occupied West Bank. She has extensive experience in community development, inclusive education programs and microfinance, and has led multiple initiatives aimed at fostering sustainable growth in Palestine. Currently, Mesa serves as the Director of Strategy and Global Partnerships at Doctors Against Genocide. She's also the founder and CEO of ScaleX, a firm dedicated to helping organizations scale by building equitable and sustainable structures. Mesa, the people of Belleville welcome you, and we look forward to hearing you. And you'll have about 15 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for putting this event together. I know you've gone through a lot of hurdles to get us here, and I appreciate everyone's dedication and relentless effort to make this happen. So I just want to start by saying Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon each and every one of you. I'm a Palestinian living on the unceded traditional and ancestral territory of many indigenous nations, including the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit, now called Toronto. I'm also a member of Doctors Against Genocide, and we are a global organization committed to preventing genocide, advocating for justice, and protecting healthcare workers and patients everywhere in the world. It is our pleasure to co-sponsor this event and be in the company of principled voices. And first, I want to thank everyone who showed up today. I know it has been a challenge for making it happen. So thank you so much for refusing to look away. As a Palestinian, your presence here is not just a gesture of solidarity, but it really is a loud declaration that you will not be complicit in silence and that you will stand where others have chosen to fall. And yet, it's so strange to me. It's almost unbelievable and revealing that speaking out against genocide, apartheid, and racism is still labeled radical, while funding those who, perpetuate these crimes is considered mainstream. And we've come under so much attack for simply telling the truth. 2 venues canceled. I'm sure you talked about it, under false allegations, smears designed to silence us because the criminals are afraid of the truth. They know that once the truth is spoken, it cannot be unheard. Once people wake up, they cannot go back to sleep. So I just want to say that there's nothing radical about demanding human rights. There's really nothing extreme about standing against the mass killing of children, the targeting of hospitals, the systemic dehumanization of our entire people. What is radical, though, is pretending that this is the norm. What is radical is calling this complicated while watching a genocide live streamed to the world. We've been sold lies that tell us that progress matters more than people, that innovation justifies suffering, that medicine, technology, and even healthcare itself can be tools of power and domination. But what is progress if it is not built, if it's built on the bones of the oppressed? What is innovation if it erases the sanctity of life? I think it's a question we should ask ourselves every day. At Doctors Against Genocide, we believe medicine must be human first. It must never be a symbol of elitism. It must never be an instrument of colonization. Leadership in healthcare does not mean chasing comfort, it means sacrifice, and especially today. It means amplifying the silenced and means using our privilege, whatever we have of it, to protect those under attack. I also want to remind everyone that this is not a conflict, it is not a war, it's a genocide. And language matters, because when we obscure the truth, we perpetuate the systems that allow atrocities to continue. Calling it genocide is not about politics, it's about accuracy, and it's about justice. It forces the world to confront root causes and demand accountability. It challenges the lie that this is simply a humanitarian crisis, rather than decades of long projects of ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism, and dehumanization. Today, I speak to you especially with a very heavy heart. We've watched 2 days ago atrocities unfold in front of our eyes. Just 2 days ago, over 419 people were murdered in a single night, most of them women and children. It happened in the holy month of Ramadan, a time meant for peace, reflection, and spiritual connection. This massacre took place after 2 weeks of total blockade. No food, no water, no electricity, no aid whatsoever. Entire families were wiped out while sleeping, children maimed and dismembered, yet the world continues to watch without any serious action. This is not just policy failure. This is not just a moral collapse. This is a deliberate and systemic erasure of a people in real time and live streamed to us to see. The world yet is still debating whether to act. As we witness the rise of fascism globally, where truth is punished and justice is criminalized, our collective voices must only get louder, and we are not the fringe. We are the front line of humanity's conscience. And these struggles are deeply interconnected. The fight for Gaza is the fight for all of us, for dignity, for humanity, for life itself. Make no mistake, the bombs that fall on Gaza connect directly to the injustices we see around us. When billions are spent on war, shelters go underfunded, unhoused people freeze to death on our streets, and we allow unimaginable levels of harm on the most vulnerable population among us. When we allow genocide in Gaza, in Congo, in Sudan, and in other places around the world, we normalize apathy here at home. When healthcare workers are murdered in Gaza, we must ask, what does our silence really enable? We must always honor the doctors of Gaza, the ones who stayed when the bombs fell, like Dr. Loh, who said, if I go, who treats my patients? We must honor the ones who were abducted, tortured, raped, and murdered, like Dr. El-Bursh, who was killed for daring to care. And we must not forget our colleague and friend, Dr. Hussam Abu Safieh, a pediatrician who stayed after losing his son, his colleagues, his entire hospital. His mother passed away without knowing if her son was still alive or not. Today, he and over 400 healthcare workers are still illegally detained in Israeli torture camps. Why? Because when the goal is dehumanization, the very act of saving life becomes a threat. And that's what we're up against. An empire that wants us gone, nameless, faceless, erased, and still we resist. I want to remind everyone that a ceasefire is only the beginning. It's a necessary first step, not the destination. True peace demands justice, accountability, and the dismantling of the structures that made this genocide possible. As we stand together in this space, as advocates, healthcare workers, and people with conscience, we carry a shared responsibility because genocide is not just a crime against one people, it's against humanity. To remain silent is to betray the oath to protect life. To close, I just want to let everybody know that we're still mourning. Palestinians and people are still mourning. We're still mourning the death of loved ones, the destruction of livelihoods, and we're taking inventory of everything we've lost, but we're also rising. It's not about winning, it's about refusing to let anyone else endure what we have endured. Our grief is sacred, and it fuels the fire for justice that cannot be extinguished. There's something I want to share with you. Maybe I can share it with the organizers to share with the group a petition that we just launched to demand several things from our government, especially in the light of the elections. We want an immediate and permanent ceasefire, a two-way arms embargo on Israel, supporting justice through the ICC and the ICJ, urgent humanitarian aid to Gaza, protection of healthcare workers and medical institutions. We need our government to recognize that this is a genocide, and we need them to evict Israeli diplomats. We will not be silent, we will not be erased, and we will not stop. Thank you, Free Palestine, and Salaam alaikum.
Thank you very much, Maisa. Our next speaker is Amy Leah Porter. She's an experienced healthcare professional with over 2 decades of dedicated service in trauma and global health. A Canadian-trained nurse with a master's in global public health from the University of Manchester, she's worked extensively across numerous countries. Her field experience includes significant missions with Médecins Sans Frontières, that's Doctors Without Borders, in Africa, in the Middle East, most recently in Gaza. Driven by a profound commitment to humanitarian aid, Amy Leah is particularly passionate about ensuring access to essential healthcare for individuals in conflict zones. Welcome to our community, Amy. It's too bad you can't be here with us, but we're happy that you've joined us and looking forward to your work.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. I don't even know the last time I did a presentation without PowerPoint. I admire those who can just speak. Unfortunately, I need a little bit of a tool. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about the plight of Gaza's healthcare system and the workers that are there. And I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. Anybody who knows MSF knows that one of our core pillars is terminology. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, and I apologize to any French speakers in the room, but we want to speak out about what we see. And so I really do enjoy and appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to talk to you today. So I want to start by showing, I can get this to work. There we go. This is a map of where MSF is working right now in Gaza. Now, this map is accurate as of February 1st, but unfortunately, I can tell you that this map changes all the time. I do know that MSF has actually opened up another hospital in the north since this map has been developed, but this map even changes during the day. There are times where we have healthcare facilities, but for security reasons, we can't even operate day to day, or we have to shut them down. We have to move a lot depending on the population shifting. We know that for a long time, the population was moving south, but then when the ceasefire happened, some of the population started to return north. And so MSF moves their operations around based on where the population is located. Now, I've worked, as was mentioned, I've worked in other conflict zones before, and I can tell you that providing healthcare in Gaza, there are a lot of similarities to providing healthcare in conflict zones, but there are a huge number of challenges that we just don't face on a normal basis. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those challenges today. The one that we all hear about, I know a lot, is infrastructure destruction. And we know this happens. This happens in other conflict zones. all heard about Afghanistan being, but Yemen has lost several hospitals. The one thing that's different in Gaza is that it's not just hospitals. It is hospitals, but it's also everything else. It's your local pharmacies are destroyed. It's your physical therapy clinics. Everything is just gone and completely gone in a lot of cases. This is Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. This happened while I was there last year. This was about 11 kilometers from where we sleep. The hospital was surrounded, it was taken over, it was bombed. It was not completely destroyed, and I can tell you that at present it is open back up again and partially functioning. However, during this period of time, a lot of healthcare workers were taken into custody by the IDF. A lot of patients died. It was a really, really tragic time. This is actually Al-Shifa Hospital, pardon me, in Gaza City. And I was never here. I was not allowed into the north when I was in Gaza. But I put this photo on here because I think everybody has this hospital in their local cities, right? We all have that really big hospital that you go to if something's really bad or if you need a really big specialist or something like that. We call them quaternary or tertiary care facilities where we send places to. This was Al-Shifa for the region. And the loss of Al-Shifa was a huge, huge loss to Gaza. Now, when I was working down in Rafah, I remember particularly Al-Najr Hospital, which was a hospital right in the south of Gaza. That hospital has, I just confirmed it a minute ago, has been completely destroyed. But I met so many surgeons from Al-Shifa Hospital here who just showed up because they're like, we want to help and we want to do something, but we have nowhere to go. We want to operate. So there's a lot of people there just sort of looking for the ability to help. And it's not just hospitals. I mean, that's obviously a really big thing, but all the little things that we take for granted. I wanted to put these photos on here because I think they really illustrate the point. MSF, and this is close to the start of the conflict, MSF had 5 of these marked vehicles. Now MSF slaps their logo on everything. Let me tell you that we wear the logo. Got it on now. We put it on all our vehicles. It's on the roof. It's on the sides. These 5 vehicles were parked outside of the MS office. They were empty, clearly labeled with the logo, and they were struck by Israeli bulldozers. Bulldozers came in and just deliberately destroyed them. After they destroyed them, they set them on fire. And I heard all of this from one of the witnesses who was there, who was one of our drivers. And they were told, like, these are not related to anything. These are MSF vehicles. And nobody cared, and they destroyed them anyway. Now, normally, if we were home, we just go to the dealership and get another car. And, it's unfortunate. We can't do that there. We can't get things like this into the country. Getting something like a new vehicle across a border like this is virtually impossible. So the destruction of something that we use every day to move not only staff around, but all of the supplies and stuff was really, really hard. This was just a needless, deliberate attack on healthcare workers, again, in violation of the Geneva Convention. And then, of course, we know about supply issues. This is a photo that I took. When I went into Gaza, I actually crossed in at Rafah, at the Rafah crossing, before it has been destroyed. So I came in across the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. And for several kilometers, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of trucks lining the roads waiting to get into Gaza. Now, we don't have time for me today to go through the whole process of what it took at that time to get a truck into Gaza with the X-raying and security, but I can tell you that we were not seeing these trucks coming across. And these trucks hold the medical supplies we need, they hold medications, but they also hold food and blankets and tents and everyday items of stuff we were trying to get in. I don't think you can see it in this photo, but I would see, I didn't see our logo when I crossed, but I did see ICRC and I did see World Central Kitchen logos on trucks, plus just regular supply trucks lined up, not coming in. When I was there, at one point we had a 10-day period where we did not get any supplies into the country, including food, and really including coffee, which became a huge problem for a lot of us. But now, I last heard March 3rd, they haven't had anything cross the border since then. And it's 20 seconds. So twice the amount of time. So it's a huge struggle. For things like this is some dressing supplies we were using. And so what is we can't use the same dressing supplies we would normally use to treat these particular injuries because we just don't have the supplies. We have to sort of ration what we do have and try to make kind of alternative decisions. This was one of the pharmacies that we were working out of. And again, we don't have enough medications and we don't have the right medications. Any clinician knows, you don't switch people's medications willy-nilly, but we would have patients who show up who are like, look, I take a Atenolol and I left my blood pressure medication behind when I fled the house. And we're like, oh, we don't have that. So we can try something else. But without the proper follow-up and monitoring, it's really not a good idea just to be switching these things around. We were taking care of a lot of people in the internally displaced camps, and there was a big lice outbreak. Lice, something so simple to treat, but yet we didn't have the medication to help treat lice. It's just really, really frustrating when you want to be able to take care of people and you don't have the supplies. But one of the biggest problems we actually have was space. MSF prides itself on being a logistician focused organization. And so we say usually, I think it's within 24 to 72 hours in the world, we can be somewhere and set up and functioning. And that's because we have a really talented logistician team who can make this happen. And this is an example of Nepal after the earthquake. We had these tents. This is an operating theater tent, but we had other tents as well. And we came, and because the structures were not sound to actually operate in, we built our own. And we had, okay, here's some structures, and we could start doing surgery again. We like to work in local facilities, but if we can't, then we can set up ones. Unfortunately, with the supply issue, we couldn't get anything like this across the border. Normally, we would operate, like I said, 24 to 72 hours. In the best case scenario in Gaza, we were looking at 6 weeks to 3 months to get stuff across the border if we ordered it that day. But even if we did get them across, where are we going to put them? This photo was Rafah. I took this photo. I don't think this photo could be duplicated today. I think most of Rafah has subsequently been destroyed. But if you can see, there's just nowhere to put a tent. Those buildings are full of several families living in each floor at any point in time, or there's tents set up everywhere. At that time, Rafah was holding a population of 1.7 to 1.9 million people in just this teeny little area, like a really teeny part of an already teeny strip of land. And so we didn't have anywhere to open up a structure. But all of these people that you see here, they needed primary health care, and they needed some sort of healthcare option. And so we actually opened up trucks. We opened up box trucks, very similar to these two here. And through these trucks, we would see patients. The truck on the left, we actually ran dressing changes. So a lot of these patients who had received wounds either from the war or just regular diabetic ulcers had nowhere to have them cared for. So we took care of them here. And the other truck, we had some physicians, and they would see patients every day to try and get little things taken care of. I ran out of my medication, or I have a UTI, or things like that. So this is what we did for our primary care clinics. But as you can tell, a healthcare system like this, it's not enough. I mean, one of the biggest problems you have in any conflict area, whenever you have any destruction to the healthcare system, is you have too many patients. That is so true for any healthcare in Gaza. This is a deceptive photo because it's empty. This photo was the maternity room that we were running in Rafah at the time. Again, it was the only maternity option for southern Gaza for that population of about 1.8 million people. Now, it's really clean and empty here because they just had a sewer spill. And so this is after it was cleaned up before we reopened again. In this room, women would come to give birth. After they gave birth, they were discharged in 2 hours. If they had a C-section, they were discharged home in 6 hours. And when I say home, I'm referring again to those tents or those structures that I showed you, overcrowded with brand newborn babies. We did not have the ability to take care of them properly. At one point, one of the midwives I worked with was telling me they had 2 women giving birth at the same time on the same bed. There was no space to put anybody. This is Alexa Hospital. I worked at this facility, and this is what was actually taken by my colleague Karen. I've worked in emergency rooms in many countries, huge trauma centers in the US. I've worked in the Middle East. This was unbelievable. I've worked through many mass casualties. At Alexa Hospital, they were seeing 12 to 15 mass casualties a day. Now, obviously, that number changes, but that was an average day. This right here is an average day. People would come in, ambulances would come, they would just drop people on the ground. It was, no one would know who they were or why they were there. Patients were sharing beds, unrelated incidents, unrelated patients. Stretchers, if we had to move somebody to the operating theater, they would try and use a hand stretcher, or if they found one with wheels, it never had a mattress. It is just absolute complete chaos. And even back to our trucks, like I said, we were seeing 450 to 500 patients a day through the back of a box truck. And all of these people would come so early, and they would line up as soon as the sun was up. And at the time, it was freezing. It's hard to tell, but right behind that kind of wall there is the Mediterranean. So the winds would come off the Mediterranean and be so cold. And we had no power, no electricity. So trying to take care of people in the back of a box truck, you have to have the doors open so you can have some light. And then it was just freezing to try and get them even just a little bit of care. But the results of a healthcare system that ends up in this complete and utter disarray is that healthcare overall is just not available, and it's not accessible to the population. This is a little girl we did take care of in a structure we were able to build at one point. She had been injured. She had a femur or her leg bone fractured really badly, and she was taken care of in Gaza City. Months before, they put an external fixator device on. Her wounds had healed nicely, but the hospital was attacked, and she had to flee with her uncle because the rest of her family members had passed away, and she had no follow-up care since then. So she's really cute and smiling in this photo, and this is one of my favorite photos because the weeks before when she had come in, she was screaming, "Let me die," when they tried to move her onto the bed. But our physical therapist worked with her, and they were able to get her up to the point where she could stand. Anyone here who's had surgery knows that you don't have surgery and then let's go home, right? There's always some sort of follow-up or something that you do, but it just wasn't available. I took this photo before I knew what was happening, but whenever somebody would hear about a healthcare team being available, they would just show up, no matter what their problem was. And on this donkey cart is an unconscious man who fell and had obviously suffered some sort of closed head injury. And we went up to him and looked at him, and I was like, he has a closed head injury, and we're a box truck with a inadequate medication supply. So we had to turn him around and send him away on the back of a donkey cart in the direction that we think maybe there is an ambulance, so that that ambulance could hopefully get him to a facility that might be functioning enough to try and help him. It's one of the most I remember watching the donkey cart pull away, and it was one of the most helpless feelings of all time. And we couldn't call for the ambulance because we don't have cell service and we don't have any reception. We can't do anything. There's just nowhere to send people. And overall, the care we're providing is it's short of my standards, it's short of MSF standards, and it's definitely short of all of the Palestinian healthcare workers that I was with. It's not what they wanted to provide. Nobody wants to be giving this type of healthcare. And the healthcare workers are exhausted. You don't get a break. I mean, when I was there, I worked every single day. That was for a few weeks, a month or so at a time. They don't ever get this. This is their life. They get up every day and they work. And your nights, you don't sleep at night. I think here I have a little video. This is what it sounds like at night. I want you to listen to this video. I'll just play the second video. Listen, first you'll hear a really high-pitched whiny noise. This is surveillance drones, and we had surveillance drones 24 hours a day over top of us. And so you can hear my colleagues talking about batteries or something around there. That was just a random video I shot, I think, coming back from a shower one night. Those bombs are actually pretty far away. But you would hear that nonstop. And where I slept, I was in a concrete house and I was well protected, but our house would shake sometimes. Like I would wake up in the morning and think my neighbors must be blowing up. That's how much it would shake. And I wasn't close to the front line. So for our staff who have to try and sleep with this, and a lot of them are not instructors, they're intense to go through this, you don't sleep. I never had a good night's sleep when I was there. Some of them wake up even under worse circumstances. One of our pharmacy techs woke up when bullets tore through his tent and into his leg. Our mental health worker woke up to her house being bombed and she lost 7 family members that day. This is a photo of what we called the beach house. It was an MSF facility that was officially deconflicted. And when MSF goes into these war zones and stuff like that, we don't go crazy like, some cowboy. Everything we do is coordinated. We coordinate with the IDF and we coordinate we would coordinate with some of the Hamas people. So they know where we are. They know where we're working. They know where our staff are. And this is one of the staff houses. So this house is what we call officially deconflicted, meaning that those coordinates are provided to everybody ahead of time. And so it's considered off limits. We don't let anything, bad happen in those houses. And in turn, they're safe. This house was shelled by an Israeli tank. And one of my workers, Dawu, his wife and his daughter-in-law burned to death that night after the explosion, and 2 of his daughters were severely burned. They were making dinner. And so even when we provide safe healthcare spaces for our healthcare workers to stay, it doesn't work. They're still attacked. And so I remember talking to people afterwards and they said, what do I know where is safe? Where am I supposed to go? If they're not following you or following your safety rules, there's nothing. It's really, really hard to get any rest under these circumstances. And so it's just exhausting. It's hard to watch. A lot of them are still, almost everyone that we worked with in southern Gaza had come from the north. And they all are thinking about their homes and what's left of their homes. And now a lot of them knew because they had friends who checked and there's nothing left. And I remember Ola telling me one of our health promoters saying that every day her daughter said to her, when can I go home to my toys? And she never had the heart to tell her, of course, that everything was gone. This is Moment. He's one of our healthcare workers. And actually I was speaking with him recently. I wanted to show you this photo because this photo was actually taken exactly 1 year ago today. This is Zaina. She was born into war. So obviously it's all she's ever known. She's a year today. And Moment would tell me how every day he worries for his daughter. Right now, he is in charge of vaccination services for UNICEF for Southern Gaza. So he's helping with MMR and polio because they're starting to see indications of these illnesses returning. Now, the other thing I just want to mention is, surveillance in these situations is really hard. And so when they do have cases they suspect of polio, getting testing is really hard. I was there during a hepatitis A outbreak and everything was just, clinical diagnosing. There's just no ability to do any of the things that you would normally do. And I asked him, I said, did you try and return to the north at all when the ceasefire happened? And he said, no, because my house is gone. I said, oh, I guess I'm happier that you're in the south because I think maybe they're attacking the north again. And he just said to me, nowhere is safe. And then one last person I wanted to tell you about, this is Wahib. He is a medical doctor who is, in addition to being a medical doctor in Gaza, just one of the best people I've ever met. A funny, personable, talented, just an absolutely great guy. And before I talk to you guys today, I said this way, is there anything you want me to pass along? You want me to tell people about? And one of the things he wanted to stress is just that these are people. Like, he has a daughter and a wife that he tries to take care of. But every day, he has to leave them to come to work. They're staying behind in a tent. They've moved 8, 9 times since this has started. is just so tired and he just wants this to be over. I thought I was going to meet a lot of hatred and things when I was there, but all anybody ever wanted was this to be over. They want the ceasefire to end. Now, I know I doesn't have a lot of time today, so I have a lot more stories to tell. But I don't think we're going to have time for questions. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me directly, and I'm happy to answer any. And again, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to let me speak with you today.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. I'm going to use my privilege as a moderator to ask you a couple of quick things, and then we're going to have a refreshment break. Amy, you mentioned about the shortage of supplies and things, and we often hear in our news reporting, we hear about people being killed, but so many more people are severely and painfully injured. That burns, we know there's multiple amputations required. How does that caring for those folks actually work? And how do you deal with managing pain?
Pain's really hard. Obviously anything that so in surgery, we had, at the time, we had some medications, some controlled medications that we could help to use to control pain. This is one of those great cases of a lot of alternative pain remedies. I mean, I don't think they're using laugh therapy or anything, but we would do, with a lot of like splinting and things like that. We don't have the ability to send people home with any sort of adequate pain control whatsoever. Even something simple like there's no ice. It's got electricity to make ice for I know after I had knee problems, the ice was my saving grace more than anything else. Because again, you're right. We do hear all about the killings and things like that, but that's awful, obviously, and shouldn't happen. But it's the long-term things. People just live every day in pain. That little girl, when she started crying and wanting to die, every little bit of her moving, her family couldn't bring her every day for physical therapy because they had to carry her down the stairs of where she lived. And they were pushing her around in a stroller. She was 9 that she didn't fit in because they couldn't move. And of course, the stroller is going across these bumpy things. And so every little movement was causing her excruciating pain. And we have no options and no remedies for this. They did have the actual government had some controlled medications at the time when I was there that they would like disperse that we could use in the hospitals. But other than that, for dressing changes, nope, you would just hear screaming. We would try and wet them down as much as we could before removing them. Same thing with all of the burn patients. Nothing compared to what we would do anywhere else in the world. I mean, before this, they were actually doing a pilot project. MSF was doing one in Gaza where they used artificial reality and VR headsets to do pain control or distraction therapy for burn dressings in children. And they were doing a whole paper on it. And I remember having one of the burn nurses asking me, I said, is there anything I can get you? Anything I can help? And they said, can we get those virtual reality sets back? And I was like, oh God, no. Absolutely not. So it's a huge problem, and it's one of the many problems on the long list of things that are not adequate.
Thank you, Amy. Well, it's a lot to absorb. And again, I want to thank you, Amy, and Maisa. I don't know if Maisa is still on the call. I know many of you are observing Ramadan, and here we are meeting in a mosque, and you are hospitable enough to provide food and refreshments for those of us who are not fasting today. It's very kind and generous of you. I'm going to invite everybody to take a break, meet your neighbors, have some refreshment, and then we'll resume in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on. Can I have everyone's attention for a second? I think, it's great to see people chatting and talking, and I'd like you to continue for another minute or two. At the back, there's a sign-up sheet. If you are interested, please give your mail and email, your name and email contact if you'd like to be notified about events that are happening, organization efforts, resources, things like that. If you would like to be part of that, there's a sign-up sheet at the back where you can do that.
The Doctors Without Doctors Against Genocide.
Yep. And what we can do, my son mentioned a petition in her talk that Doctors Against Genocide is promoting. If you sign up, we can forward it. We can forward it to everyone who signs up. Yeah. You could also check out their website. It's quite easy to find, Doctors Against Genocide. So let's just take another minute to find your seats. I'm going to put down my snacks. The sign-up sheet will still be there at the end, and people are welcome to stick around, but we're going to try to continue now. Someone in the audience reminded me, and I think it's a good idea. It would be nice to know how many people here are healthcare workers, health service providers, one way or another. If you are a social worker, a therapist, physio, occupational therapist. Okay, quite a few people. That's great. Excellent. Yeah, it's in the position we're in, it's interesting to relate to the people of Gaza, both as targets and people who experience the suffering directly, and also as people who try to provide care in that setting at the same time as you're being attacked. Okay, our next speaker, and we're so thankful that Yipeng, that you have made the trip to join us in person. Dr. Yipeng Ji is a primary care physician and public health practitioner based on the traditional, unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. In his clinical practice, he works in family medicine and refugee health at a community health center. He's worked on and studied the structural determinants of health in both the settler colonial context of so-called Canada and occupied Palestine. He worked in central Rafah, Gaza, during the genocide as a healthcare volunteer in multiple primary care clinics in February of 2024. Welcome here.
Thank you all for being here. You could be anywhere on this Saturday afternoon, and you're here. So thank you for sharing some time and space together. Thank you to the organizers for putting this together, despite all the obstacles that came your way. And I think it's a testament to the organizing that has to happen in the face of ongoing anti-Palestinian racism and repression and suppression of speech to be able to tell the truth. I was reminded of an interaction that I had with a cameraman and a journalist. Actually, I think Mesa was there at Toronto City Hall sometime last year. And as I was doing this interview with the journalist and the cameraman, just talking about what I saw as a healthcare worker in Rafah, the cameraman stopped filming and just walked away. So there is an aversion to even documenting and hearing the truth. There's so much that I want to say, and there's also so much that I feel that's already been said. But I think I will start by sharing a little bit about why I am before you, and then I just want to share something that I read in this book by Mohammed El-Kurd, a Palestinian poet, activist, writer, scholar. But as someone who's studied settler colonialism on this land that we're gathering on, I've worked in, with, and in community with Indigenous folks on this land, like including in the north, where I realized earlier with Dr. Michael Block, like our lives somewhat crossed paths in Nunavut, but we only properly had a chance to chat today. Where in Ottawa, where I live, which is unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, there's a system of colonization and oppression of Inuit folks in the north, where there are major health inequities. Thank you. Because of these major health inequities that exist in the north, I've studied the impact on Inuit child health in Nunavut, which led me to go work clinically and also in the public health system in Nunavut. I grew up in a place called Waterloo, Ontario, which is not that far from Six Nations of the Grand River, the largest First Nations Haudenosaunee reservation by land, but also by capita, by people in Canada. And it's not that big. And so understanding that system of medical apartheid, where the delivery of healthcare is incredibly disparate based off of who you are on this land. If you are Indigenous, for example, if you are Black, this system here is deeply racist and colonial. And so having studied that and studying the impacts on Indigenous health, I stumbled upon Palestine because of the same structures of oppression, that of capitalist extraction and colonial and Western imperial interests, for why Canada also, as a settler colonial state, continues to support Israel as a settler colonial state in doing what it's doing to the Palestinian people in Gaza. So I think we can listen to these presentations as to why healthcare is being under attack, or delivering healthcare is so incredibly difficult under conditions of genocide. But I think we must not confuse that, and be confused as to why this is happening. It is happening because it is the system that was designed this way, in the same way that the system was designed this way here on this land to dispossess, ethnically cleanse, and genocide Indigenous peoples, First Nations, and Métis on this land. The thing that I wanted to share from this book is Muhammad Al-Kurd opens the book with one of these author notes. He says, "Our history's bloodiest chapter, one must admit, has accentuated a morbid correlation that has long existed. The more martyrs there are, the more podiums. There's no denying that the Palestinian in the West and many parts of the Arab world confront staggering levels of violence, suppression, and erasure. However, within certain progressive niches in media, culture, academia, and politics, Palestine is emerging as a social currency for certain individuals. One's responsibility here, and the least that anyone can do, is to raise the ceiling of what is permissible." And so it weighs heavily on me as a non-Palestinian, also non-Indigenous on this land, that I have immense amounts of privilege to be able to bear witness to genocide. And bearing witness in of itself is not enough, especially in the times of overt genocide. It demands action, it demands solidarity, it demands that we build the people power necessary to end and stop genocide. And that starts locally. And so I think also hearing from some of the organizers about the work that has happened here locally to build up your movement, I am hopeful to be in a room with all of you and to know that I'm surrounded by people of conscience who choose to not look away. Instead, you look directly at genocide, and I hope continue to build the people power necessary to dismantle these systems of oppression. And that starts locally. That starts with understanding how our institutions, our workplaces, our pension plans, our schools, our government, the companies in our own neighborhoods and backyard are complicit in the military-industrial complex and the war machine that allows settler colonialism to do what it's doing in Gaza, funded and subsidized by our hard-earned Canadian taxpayer dollars. This slide here showcases a report that I had the privilege to contribute to that outlines that healthcare workers who have bared witness to genocide in Gaza are also human rights defenders. I would be remiss to not, acknowledge that the most overt and horrific form of suppression and repression of speech is the slaughter of thousands of healthcare workers in Gaza. That is the most overt form. But for those that live in the West, whether it be Canada, the US, the UK, we've had many healthcare workers practice and study in these locations, go to Gaza and return, that have faced repression, myself included. And we understand that repression as a part of the apparatus that allows genocide to happen right before our eyes. once again, it is not by accident, for example, that this event had to change locations twice. It is by design because a system of domination by these forms of oppression that I've already mentioned, capitalism, namely capitalism, colonialism, and by extension, Zionism as a form of colonialism on the Palestinian land and body since 1948, when the ongoing Nakba began. It is by design. And so we hoped that this report, including many other things that human rights organizations and people who bear witness on the ground continue to produce, shed that light to be able to tell the story of what is truly happening on the ground, but to really draw attention to the root causes of disease and suffering. And as Mohammed El-Kurd puts in his book, the major determinant of health for Palestinians in Palestine and the root causes of their disease and suffering is that of Zionism, by extension, settler colonialism. I reached out to a handful of healthcare workers of mine, some of whom kind of dropped everything that they were doing after the so-called ceasefire happened in January, even though Israel continued to break that ceasefire. And over the past few days has overtly destroyed that ceasefire. I reached out to them over the past few days to kind of ask them what to share today, because I think it's really important that you hear directly from them, and by extension, directly from the people on the ground. And it's been really challenging because some of the healthcare workers that I reached out to, they have worked in Palestine for many years, some of whom worked during the genocide last year, also when I was there. And the things that they've seen in the past few days alone is indescribable and incomparable to everything that they've seen even in the past year and a bit. Yeah, so I think I just want to maybe at this moment share with you a voice note from my friend, Dr. Tanya Haj Hassan. She's a pediatric intensivist physician who is working in Gaza right now. And I think she summarizes well what I've heard from the other healthcare workers that I reached out to.
Do you even begin to find the words to describe what's happening here? Every time I even try to articulate it, it's so monstrous, it's so horrific that it's like I don't want to make the words. So I won't describe what the ER looked like 2 nights ago. I won't describe the earthquake that we all felt that made it feel like it was the end of the world. Maybe I can just describe the 3 patients I'm caring for at the moment and what they've lost, and a couple of colleagues and what they've lost, to show you how the words of one of my colleagues 2 days ago, who said they're exterminating us one family at a time, reflects the reality of what the Israeli military is doing at the moment. So the first child is 1-year-old. She had extensive injuries to her bowel and kidney. She underwent life-saving surgery. And first thing she did when we took her breathing tube out was cry, "Mama, mama." Her mom's killed. Her dad's injured. In the bed next to her, we have a little girl who had multiple bowel injuries, liver injury, spleen injury, and diaphragm injury, as well as shrapnel penetrating from one side of the left side of her brain, coming out the other side of the left side of her brain. She doesn't move the right side of her body. She can't speak. She can't manage her secretions. Both her parents are injured. Her two sisters were killed. In the bed next to her, we have a 5-year-old boy, a 6-year-old boy, who had extensive injuries to both his legs, including life-threatening bleeding from one of the main arteries, muscle that's probably not going to survive, and on the other foot, bone that's penetrating, ligaments that are torn, and the entire upper foot degloved with bone sticking out. He also had swelling in his brain. He's awake now. He's doing great. Aside from his legs, he's speaking. He's asking for his family. Both his parents are injured, admitted into another building of the hospital. So he hasn't been able to see them. They haven't been able to see him. His siblings were killed, bar one sister, a 14-year-old, who comes and just stands next to his bed with her eyes covered in water. That's just the 3 patients I'm caring for at the moment in the ICU, the trauma patients I'm caring for at the moment in the ICU. One of my colleagues who lost 24 members of his family earlier in the genocide, just 2 days ago, 5 minutes after getting off the phone from his father, with his father, found out that his home had been bombed. His father was killed. His little brother was killed, and his sister had life-threatening injuries, including an injury to the spine that meant she couldn't move her arms or legs. His mom and sister and brother, I can't remember what other family members, but at least 24 of his nuclear and extended family members were killed earlier in the genocide, and now he's lost his father and his brother as well. I don't know how you begin to process that kind of grief, how you ever can find a sense of justice for what's been taken from you. As one of my other colleagues said, we are not collateral damage, we are the target. And I think that's the case. There's no other way of rationalizing everybody in the ER. I mean, that night in the ER, all but 3, I treated all women, children, elderly, and there were 3 young men, and that was it, that I personally interacted with. That was it. They were all women and kids. And I guess the last thing I'd want to say is, please don't make the sharing of these people's stories and horror and tragedy in vain. Do something about it. Do everything about it. I think I was just reading part of a book today. The title of which is "One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This." Be against this now, and in your actions, not just in your thoughts.
So Tanya sent those messages to me like 7 o'clock this morning. So not that long ago, 7 hours ago. I think it's really important that we hear about what's directly happening on the ground. I think it was helpful to hear from Amy from Médecins Sans Frontières earlier, because what she explained was essentially my experience of working on the ground in Central Rafah. Some of the photos were the scenes that I had seen, and we probably maybe overlapped in some of our time spent, because the stories that she shared, I could picture myself where I was when it happened. For example, she showed a picture of Al Nasser Hospital where it was destroyed. Myself with 3 other healthcare workers, we were planning to enter. We later did enter, but we were planning to enter and actually go to Al Nasser Hospital. we couldn't go to Al Nasser Hospital. This was in mid-February of last year because it was surrounded by tanks, Israeli tanks. And while we were in Central Rafah and we were placed at a different hospital, we would hear updates from the United Nations. I went to some of the United Nations coordination meetings in the mornings, and they would give updates as to their convoys to go to Al Nasser Hospital to do something like fix the sewage system, because sewage was spilling into the emergency department. Even that kind of convoy was being turned around. And so no one could access Al Nasser Hospital from the outside. And while I was in Central Rafah working in these primary care clinics, Al Nasser Hospital was besieged by the Israeli military, and healthcare workers and patients some of whom were killed. We know this because there are mass graves around Al Nasser Hospital that were discovered, and healthcare workers also just detained and still missing from that siege last year. They are part of the over 400, 500 that are still missing, as mentioned by Mesa earlier. These are healthcare workers that their only crime was to provide healthcare, provide life in impossible situations where you don't have enough medicines, medical supplies. And so you even wonder, like, what good are you doing? It's still something. And that put a target on their backs, has put a target on all healthcare workers' backs for that matter, especially local Palestinian healthcare workers, because as part of understanding why genocide is unfolding in Gaza from the lens of colonialism, to destroy all the conditions of life is part of that design. And where there is healthcare, there is life. There is the practice of maintaining or sustaining life. And that is what Israel continues to want to extinguish. And unfortunately, they have been extremely successful in doing that. We have heard of so many instances where healthcare workers, especially Palestinian ones, who wear a scrub or a white coat, they get pulled from the line when the hospitals get besieged, and they go missing because they go into these Israeli torture camps, some of whom you've already heard. Dr. Adnan Al-Bursh, an orthopedic surgeon, he was raped to death in one of these Israeli torture camps. As I was in these primary care clinics in Central Rafah, as Amy already mentioned, there were hepatitis A outbreaks, there were wound infections. We didn't have antibiotics at the primary care clinics that we arrived at. We started prescribing the medications that we brought with us. But that wasn't what people also needed. People needed safety, people needed food, people needed clean water, people needed decent shelter, and none of these things were available because they were either being withheld at the borders or being systematically destroyed. All conditions like systems, like hygiene systems, water systems, were being targeted and destroyed. One of the clinics that I worked at in Central Rafah, I learned later on in May when I was trying to re-enter Gaza, unsuccessfully, because in early May, the Israeli military besieged, occupied, and essentially destroyed the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing, which meant the operations where myself and you heard Amy, we went through the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula to get into Gaza through the Rafah border. That pathway became essentially non-existent. And when that was happening, I learned from a colleague on the ground that the primary care clinic that I worked at was non-functional and was essentially functioning as a morgue to store dead bodies from multiple tent massacres in Al-Mawasi area. I think it's important for me to share that although you hear voices like Tanya, and I've connected with others who are still on the ground, who went to Gaza and continue to try to enter, Israel has made it repeatedly more and more difficult to do this work. After May of last year, I mentioned the Rafah border crossing was occupied, destroyed, still hasn't been reopened. The operations for humanitarian healthcare workers to enter changed to the Kerem Abu Salem crossing in southeastern Gaza, which borders with historic Palestine, also known as Israel. And so people have to go through Amman, Jordan, into a convoy and get into Gaza through the Kerem Abu Salem crossing. There are extremely limited seats as to how healthcare workers can enter through that pathway. And we've learned over the past couple of weeks that over 50% people trying to enter are now actually being denied, many who have previously worked in Gaza with really no clear reason. And this has always been the case to some degree. If you look at Israel's apartheid policies, there's really no clear reason as to why any decisions are made, because it is racist and discriminatory. But the medications and supplies are not entering anymore, even through healthcare workers that could bring them in. I remember bringing in tens of suitcases through the Rafah border crossing, and as many others did. This is impossible through the Kerem Abu Salem crossing because Israeli military controls that border, and they're making it increasingly difficult to do any kind of work meaningfully. And so I think we have to also understand that healthcare workers who do this kind of work, this is not a solution to the question and the issue of what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Gaza. What Israel is doing is destroying the sovereign, self-determined, indigenous Palestinian healthcare system. They've essentially killed off a whole generation, and arguably 2 generations of specialty doctors, the experts, right, that have actually trained extremely well in many different parts of the world, return to Gaza because that is where their people are, and work at the hospitals and train medical students and resident doctors at 2 medical schools, Islamic University and Al-Azhar University, both of which are destroyed. And so what Israel has already done is entirely decimate the sovereign, self-determined, indigenous Palestinian healthcare system. They do it by attacking the hospitals. They do it by attacking the ambulances, as you've already seen with photo evidence. They do it by going into these hospitals and cutting the ultrasound wires so that ultrasounds can't be used. They go in and destroy MRI machines. They do it by detaining nurses, doctors, anyone who looks like they're a healthcare worker. And by doing this, it is forcing the Palestinian population in Gaza to be more reliant on international humanitarian healthcare workers, which makes me think a lot about that system of colonization here and how the promise of things like education or healthcare was used to subjugate and dominate indigenous peoples on this land, to justify their displacement, to justify destroying families and tearing families apart. When you think about the 60 scoop, when you think about residential schools, when you think about how even the Western institutionalized system of medicine has been deeply racist and colonial on this land, with the forced sterilization of indigenous women, the nutritional experimentation on indigenous children in residential schools. I think it's really important that we understand how these forms of oppression are deeply intertwined and interlinked. What is happening in Gaza, what is happening in Palestine. The experts in colonialism learn from each other. They export the things that they learn. They export the policies and practices that the military in Israel uses so that the RCMP, the police in the West, can learn from these tactics of surveillance and repression. The technologies and military weapons used in Gaza, and they actually market it as field tested, meaning they've tested this on Palestinians, that gets exported around the world. And so when people in the streets, probably yourself included, are saying our freedoms are bound with that of Palestine, we are all freer, we are all safer when Palestine is free. Like, it's not just a slogan, it's not just a chant, it is the reality, it is the truth. And that is why the dominant social order that is maintained by capitalism and colonialism and imperialism will like come down with such a heavy hammer to shut down anything that challenges that status quo. I think there's so much more that I want to say, but I'm cognizant of the time. I hope we can also have like dialogue and questions, but ultimately, it is the people of conscience, yourselves, that will change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. Like, rights in any part of the world are really not just handed to people who are oppressed. They are always fought for. People always persist. People always resist in all the different ways that are necessary to be able to free ourselves of these horrible, horrible, like, evil systems that only know death and destruction. And we really have to think about what systems that are life-affirming can really look like. And that starts locally. And I think it's really important that we recognize the work that we have to do for each other, for our neighbors. I think about just this week, like in Ottawa, we hosted an event with a popular, education collective that I formed and I'm part of, with other like-minded people that I met in the Palestine, organizing space, is the attacks on harm reduction, the attacks on supervised consumption sites, and how that rhetoric and policy of dehumanization for people who use drugs is part of a larger fascist movement to scapegoat very real economic, political issues, but to dehumanize very specific groups of people to get easy political votes or wins. So with this upcoming federal election, we also have to really understand how to hold these politicians accountable and fight against all the forms of dehumanizing rhetoric and politics that is threatening so many different communities, like here at home. I think about queer and trans communities that are under attack. Just this last weekend was the International Day Against Police Brutality, and the horrific impacts of that on the community that I live in Ottawa, hearing from Black and Indigenous folks who have lost family members at the hands of police. We have to understand that these forms of repression are interconnected. And I really hope that a movement for Palestine that we build together is also intersectional, is feminist, in the ways in which we can really free many more people by building a stronger, more solid movement with a sharpened politics. And the last thing I'll mention is, of course, there is a moral and legal obligation to end Canada's complicity in Israel's apartheid. There's multiple International Court of Justice rulings where what's happening in Gaza is genocide. What's happening in the West Bank is an illegal occupation and apartheid that must end. And the International Court of Justice gave a date of September of this year for that occupation to end. We're seeing no meaningful direction towards that. In fact, that occupation and apartheid system is getting stronger because the West continues to allow Israel to do what it's doing. And so I hope we also understand that people who are under occupation and structural oppression, they ultimately know the solutions to their own challenges. They know how to liberate themselves. They know what they need. They know what self-determination actually looks like from Turtle Island to Palestine. And so we have to continue to listen to them directly. And I know ultimately Palestine will be free in our lifetimes. Unfortunately, because of everything that we've seen over the past year or so, and by extension, 77 years. And I know that Palestine will free Palestinians in Palestine will free themselves through their efforts in resisting in all the different ways that are necessary. But that does not absolve us of our moral and legal obligations to end that complicity and how our taxpayer dollars, our government, all the different ways in which institutions are complicit, that is our responsibility to end those forms of complicity. And we only are able to do that if we work in coalition with one another, in community with one another, to build the people power necessary to force that change. And being in these kinds of spaces in which we continue to sharpen our politics, but ultimately get to know our neighbor, get to know the people that we are on the streets with, that is the only way forward to build a movement for a free Palestine here and for self-determination and liberation of Indigenous peoples here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yifeng. Very challenging words. A lot of this is difficult to absorb, difficult to integrate into our ordinary everyday lives, how we spend our time and how we live. I just got a note that we may be joined by a physician in Gaza virtually. And I know some of you, this was scheduled to go till 1 o'clock. And if there are people who need to leave, please feel free. Shahid, will you let me know when they call in?
They're here. I'm happy to introduce Dr. Deirdre Noonans.
Okay, all right, very good.
Joining us from Gaza, she is an orthopedic surgeon working currently at the European Hospital. And I'm so grateful for you, Dr. Noonans, for joining us. But also she was able to have some of her colleagues and maybe some of the patients join us to speak to the Canadians in the room. Wondering though, if there's a way for the camera to be switched so that Dr. Deirdre and the people of Gaza can see who's in the audience to connect with you and speak to you. And the same for the camera in Belleville. If we can switch it around, amazing.
Yeah, I'm just gonna okay.
Amazing. Thank
Just
you.
give them away.
Yes, perfect. So okay, so I'm gonna hand it over to Dr. Noonans to say a few things and then share with us who's with her and what they want to share with us. Thank you so much. So grateful to have you join.
Thank you, everybody, and it's wonderful to see all the faces in the crowd there. My name's Deirdre. I'm from Saskatchewan. I'm very lucky to be here in Gaza. It's my fifth time working here in Gaza, the second time in the past year, and I know that you have an educated audience there and an informed audience. But one thing that I don't think we see quite of in the portrayal of Palestinians and Gazans is not just how much they have been forced to suffer, but how much they continue to be committed to life and to work, and how amazing these guys that I work with are, that they show up to work every day. They work under incredibly difficult circumstances. They hug each other good morning. They say good morning to everybody. They take wonderful care of their patients. And I cannot admire them enough. I cannot say enough good things about the colleagues I have here. So I'm going to pass you first to Ibrahim to say hi
Hello.
and whatever else you want to say.
Hello, everybody. I don't know his name, but we are received your solidarity, your supporting, especially supporting from Canada, from some Europe of country. We are received every your feeling about us. Thank you from EGH Hospital. We are working from 2 years until now. With difficult situation, with really genocide, we are facing here a lot of cases, a lot of murder, but we are still good. We are still working without pain. Thank you for supporting, especially from Canada, from Europe. Thank you again.
Yes. Yeah.
Hello. Okay. It's my name is Ala. I'm 14 years, and I want to thank you and thank everyone who is support us and support Gaza and stay with us in this is a bad time. Of course, it's bad time in Gaza. So I want to say thank you, thank everyone, for everyone who watched me, and for Dr. D, for everyone or anyone he helped us, he stay with us. That's it's a good thing from people like you. So I don't know what I say, but thank you from my deep my heart. Thank you for everyone who helped us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want to say something? One more colleague is here working hard on paperwork with his beautiful handwriting. Hossam.
How are you?
Hi.
How are you? My name is Hussam. You head nurse of the operation room here. Okay.
Hossam is busy with his paperwork, and we're hoping to enjoy a little bit of music together after this, and listen to some music together with the team. They've been working hard all day, but at the moment we have a little bit of a pause. So it's after iftar, and everybody's ready to relax and decompress a little bit. So thank you all for letting us say a quick hello. Thank you all for everything that you are doing for Gaza. Allah would like to know if you are Arabic.
I am
Yes.
Palestinian.
Yeah, your face.
Palestinian.
Your
I
face.
am اسمي ميسا من نابلس. I should change my name actually on the thing. Yes, أنا من نابلس من فلسطين. عايشة في كندا.
اهلا وسهلا اهلين. ملامح وشك بتقول ان انت يعني فلسطينيه.
Palestinian. Yes, I am. He just said that your face looks Palestinian. He could recognize I was Palestinian. So
yeah.
thank you so much. If I may ask, what do you want this audience to know? How can we help you most? What do you want from the Canadian audience or anyone who's listening to you today? ترجم بالعربي شو بتحبوا توصلوا للجمهور الكندي والأي حدا عم يسمع؟ إيش بتحبوا توصلوا لهم؟ كيف ممكن نساعدكم؟ شو ممكن نعمل؟
هو انه stay with us, just stay with us, stay with the right thing, not with bad thing, of course, and support us with everything, maybe with your word, with your love, with your يعني with your feelings about us. So this is very good for us. ما بعرفش a lot of things, but يعني انه ممكن تترجمي لهم يعني لو احكي بالعربي؟
تفضل.
انه يعني يقفوا معنا يعني الكلام انه يدعموا الحق اللي احنا ماشيين فيه، في التعب اللي احنا شغالين فيه هذا، يعني انهم يساعدونا بالكلام ويقفوا معنا في وجه الظلم اللي احنا بنتعرض له قاعدين، والإبادة اللي بتصير بحقنا بحق الشعب اللي بيصير، وخص نص الأطفال اللي بيصير، هذا كله يعني هذه أمور
خليني أترجم.
العالم كله. تفضل.
So I'm just going to translate. He's answering how we can help as Canadians, as people with privilege in North America. And he said, just stand with us, be our voices, don't stop advocating. What is happening is genocide, and we need every voice to be with us. تفضل.
بس خلاص إنه يعني أهم شيء stay with us.
Stay with us.
Not leave us like this. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We
Thank you, Maisa.
learn courage from you. ونحن نتعلم الشجاعة منكم.
We hope that.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you for you, of course, and thank you for all Canadian people. I think a lot of Canadian, what I know for my personal thing and friend, a lot of Canadian people, they stand with us and help us. Maybe the first thing is Dr. D. I think it's a lot of thanks for Dr. D because she helped with us, stay with us day after day, night after night. So thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. D, very much.
So much. Any questions from the audience? I think it's we're not gonna keep them long because it's challenging to connect with Gaza, but if there's any questions from the audience, please let us know.
If anyone has a question, just say it out and I'll repeat it over the microphone.
Can you ask them to describe the availability of food, because it has been like 20 days since the blockade was eventually put in place, and it seems like the situation is getting quite dire.
Right. So the question is, just so everyone can hear, there's been a blockade now for 20 days of anything going into Gaza. What is the situation for food? Are people getting food? What is the nourishment situation for people?
It's about this food and situation. It's hard thing, and the food is maybe we're going to not have enough food for man, for baby, and for infant. It's a possible situation now because nothing entered to Gaza. Also, the water, no water entered to Gaza, so it's going to a bad time and a bad thing. Of course, we hope this situation ended as soon as possible, because if they stay like this, it's I don't know why. I can't imagine what we will the situation will be will be in it. So it's hard thing. مش عارف اذا كانت ترجمي لهم ان احنا يعني حتكون الامور صعبه جدا. انه حتكون الامور صعبه صراحه، يعني في الايام هذه، انه قله الاكل وقله الشرب حتاثر كثير على الناس، من ناحيه الطاقه للناس مثلا في الحياه، كيف حتعيش صعبه الامور شويه، فانه حتكون صعبه كثير كثير. فاحنا بنتمنى انهم يوقفوا معنا في هذا الامر، انه يكون قدر المستطاع في ضغط على الجانب الاسرائيلي انه يفتح المعابر في الوقت هذا حتى ان الناس تقدر تعيش.
So what he's saying is, I think he mentioned it in English too, is that the situation is dire. Not only is the food supply limited, but also the water, clean drinking water. And he's asking everyone to put pressure on our governments and anyone to push for an end of this blockade and to allow free-flowing aid into Gaza.
Any other questions? We really, really appreciate your taking the time in your very busy day, and have a good break this evening. We wish you safety and wellness. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for support.
Thank you.
Oh.
Shahid, do we have time for a couple of questions for the speakers, or? Yeah, does anyone have a question for any of the particular speakers? And we'll take a question or two, and then Shahid is going to close the meeting. Yes.
I have a question for Dr. Keaton. As someone working in healthcare as well, I work in support services, so I'm not directly involved in patient care. But I have on occasion discussed this subject with my colleagues who are nurses and doctors. And I find there's a barrier in that discussion. So I'm wondering for yourself, as someone who is directly involved and then comes back to your home hospital, what kind of experiences are you having when I'm getting out of discussions at this level? I imagine it's even worse for you at your level in this industry.
I'll just summarize the question, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Our friend works in health delivery services in a support capacity, and is finding it very difficult to engage in discussions, and is feeling, kind of shut down at times. And his question is for Dr. G. Do you encounter this, and how do you respond and deal with it? And
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. Is it this mic? Yeah. I don't know if I have a good answer, because the attacks, they keep coming. Like, I recently had 3 college complaints about like social media posts, all of which eventually were dismissed, and now 2 of the complaints are being appealed by the person that submitted the complaints. And they said that they're my patient, they're not my patients. Ultimately, like, the work that I do at the clinics that I work at, like, have not had any complaints from patients, from the staff that I work with, because I'm a healthcare worker that's can identify like what injustice looks like, and also can understand, like, have an intersectional lens as to different forms of oppression and how do we actually tackle that also within healthcare. I'm someone who has also like studied and practiced like anti-racism, and what does that look like in healthcare? What does it look like in clinical research? And when we are well read, I think we are well able to like push back against really like bad faith actors, like racist remarks that are often rooted in anti-Palestinian racism. I think there is something to be said about folks who are quote unquote neutral or on the fence, and they feel like this is not an issue for them to consider, an issue for them to think about. And I think that is where I'm constantly thinking about like how to welcome people in. And I don't want to, like push people into a corner and like, because there might be very real fears. Often there are, and that's because the suppression of anti-Palestinian racism, like using anti-Palestinian racism to suppress, is just awfully violent right now, right? And it's actually getting worse, right? We have like Mahmoud Khalil, who's like been disappeared, like he's abducted for being a graduate student at Columbia University and protesting against genocide. I think he has a green card. And like we are seeing these things happen in pockets all over the place, especially in the US, Canada, the UK. But I think it really means like locally, especially in the places that we work, we find our allies, and it just takes like one other person, and then we like build, right? And it's about having relationships. Like I don't have really in-depth conversations about Palestine, let alone other social justice issues, unless if there's a relationship with my coworker and there's a shared degree of like respect and trust, and also acknowledgement that if conflict arises, we agree to work on that conflict and get through it together. But that's not always the case if someone's coming from a position of racism or bias and discrimination. That's certainly not where I want to put my energy. But there are folks that are on the fence, and maybe that's some of the folks that you're experiencing. And I think it's exploring some of those fears, some of the hesitation. But I also recognize that that's not always the work for us to do. There's work that other people need to do on their own to educate themselves about like anti-Indigenous racism, anti-Black racism, anti-Asian racism, anti-Palestinian racism. But especially if we have a working relationship within the healthcare setting, I think there are really important opportunities to kind of like there are openings. And like over the past few days, I think we've seen here's an opening to recenter Palestine, to recenter the genocide. And how do we get people to understand these connections as to we are all less safe in this world if what's happening in Gaza and Palestine goes unchecked. We are all less safe. And so like, I recognize like capitalism is just like having such a havoc on people's lives here that people feel like they can't, take on any other issues because their lives are in this like, hamster wheel rat race. And that's really real. And we need to address that. But how is that connected to what's happening in Palestine? That is connected, right? We're not in this province, in this country, we're not appropriately addressing healthcare, education, housing, public transportation, but we are able to like allow companies to be subsidized in sending military technology to Israel. Only like 18% of active permits have been suspended. And there are these, anyways, I'll keep going on, but I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to invite Shahid to say goodbye to all of us. And I just want to express again on my own behalf how much I've appreciated the group coming together. And it's important to do that at a community level. So thank you.
Yeah, very tall people have been here. So unfortunately, we lost our audio. This is a time for prayer. So they took our microphone off because this microphone and speaker, they're connected all the way. Can you hear me? I don't think. So yeah, I will continue. Meanwhile, hopefully, can somebody know when the prayer is over so we can turn on the mic? Can we find out from downstairs? If so once that is done, we will have louder voice. But basically, thank you very much. We are running out of time, and thank you, Mesa, for bringing the doctors from Gaza. It was just heartbreaking to see them work in those hard situations, and they're putting their life online basically just to do their work, and they're just doing the work for the humanity. So at this point, I would like to thank our sponsors of the event and endorse the organization for endorsing Doctors Against Genocide. Huge thanks to Mesa and her team to backing our event and our small group who are trying to do as best as we can. Doctors Without Borders have provided their very valuable speaker to speak with us. I think these are still working. So at the same time, we have another local organization, a coalition against coalition for suppression of genocide from Peterborough. It's good. Okay, good. Testing. Yeah. I'm gonna have to repeat all of that, so. No, I'll keep going. So we have support from Independent Jewish Voices. Laura is here, our member from Jewish community. Their last, I mean, not last, but more importantly, what I wanted to thank is Belleville Mosque. As I mentioned earlier, we got cancellation after cancellation, and people were just getting afraid or worried what's going on. And Belleville Mosque at that point, which normally they just want to stay out of the limelight, they just stepped up and said, yeah, we'll support it. Let's do it. Huge thanks. So I do not like call for donations or anything, but I asked Megan to put a link here. If you want to give any donations, just consider that organization, which is, they also send funding to Gaza for, we just send funding for food for Gaza just recently from the Belleville Mosque. And not any less important, I would like to acknowledge Christchurch Anglican, especially Reverend Jeff O'Hare. I believe he's not here. No pun intended. He has offered his unequivocal support to host our event. When I called him and I was looking for spaces, he offered his church to host this event. Unfortunately, not on this Saturday, it was a future day. But his gesture of kindness is just forever going to be making a place in our arts. So great thanks to Reverend Jeff O'Hare. We have again a huge support and thank from Intelligencer, Derek Baldwin specifically. He has thrown his full backing, covering nothing but truth. And I have not met him personally, and I'm going to hug him when I see him, and he's going to regret it. Huge thanks to that guy. It's very hard to stand for truth, especially when you have oppression, especially when somebody is pushing back and your job is at risk. Dr. G is a great example of that whole thing. We have Amnesty International support, Mika. Without Mika, we would be not able to do even half of what we do. She has connected me to people who are like higher up and like celebrities level. And I mean, I cannot thank her enough. She's like into everything in a good way. So these are the major organizations that have supported us. And I would like to acknowledge our crew members, Belleville for Justice and Peace. Every Sunday, if you drive by Bell Boulevard and North Front Street, you will see us holding banners. Tomorrow, you will see again, 1:30 to 3:30, rain or shine, thunderstorm or scorching heat. We have seen -14. We have seen like, I don't know how high it goes here. Burning summer and winters we have seen, but not a single Sunday we have missed. That is going on since November of 2023, almost 16 months. If you could join us over there, that would be great. Otherwise, just drive by and honk. The members who you have seen, Mustafa is moving around. He's still sitting here. We have Megan, who's taking care of the conferencing and electronics. Tish, thank you. You can thank her for coffee and everything else that she is doing. And very critical member, Sean, is here as well. He has taken care of security, and we had insider information, or we've been given tips that we should be cautious. Thankfully, nothing bad happened. Laura, very respectable member. She's from Peterborough Jewish community, and her husband Warren are sitting here on my right, to your left, probably your, yeah. They drive a long way from a different city over here for multiple hours to join, and they drive same distance to participate in our Sunday protests. Rudy probably is not here. So today his duty was to redirect traffic from 250 Sydney Street over here. He did a great job, I think, because we have like almost around 100 people. And I think Lindsay, I mentioned Lindsay here. And Jim and his wife are sitting here. They are passionate supporter, and I can't thank them. I can't stop thinking on 17th when there was a huge unexpected bombing by Israel onto sleeping children. They emailed me that we are not able to sleep. We're not able to breathe. We're not doing anything. Got to do something. Just get out. So we just got out on the street and did what we could do at that time, just emergency ready. Huge thanks to them as well. Did I miss anyone from our volunteer? Mustafa, yeah, that was the first one. Daryl, you have already heard him speaking. A very strong voice, very prominent member of our group, joins occasionally. And a couple of members of Belleville Mosque who were doing volunteering, and I think they just walked out because of the prayer. I don't know their name, but yeah, they're here. One gentleman over there, he's on his phone. He's one of them who's been helping us and setting up things and stuff like that.
Sam.
That's him. So basically, this is a wrap up, and I wanted to wrap up with a set of actions that I'm thinking about that you guys can take, because everybody says, what can we do? So yeah, you can do a lot. You have power in your hand. You're part of humanity. You're part of 8 billion individuals living in the world, and you are the one who make the 8 billion. So you are not nothing. You have a humongous power in your words, in your hands and your voice, and you can use that power for the good. First thing is that educate yourself, educate your kids, tell your friends what is truth, what is happening, and what is reality and what is propaganda. Tell them to differentiate what is real and what is not. Tell them to learn how to find fake news. Tell them how to find what is the real source and what is the fabricated source. When they find the truth, and they have goodness in their heart, your job is pretty much done, because truth finds its way. Truth will always be the victorious in the end. It takes time, but it is the strongest victory that you have. And once they turn around, there's no going back. And I have seen people from all walks of life during 16 months standing on the intersection. They have no connection to me. They have no connection to Palestine or Israel or Gaza. And they walk up and they say, we can't see this happening and we are outraged. And please tell us what we can do. You can write, if you have social media, you can write to the social media. You can write to our MPs and MPPs. And one more thing you're going to write, which I'm going to urge you do, is to write to the mayor and city. And I'm going to get to it in a minute. And the other thing you can do is with your wallet. You have a wallet and you earned your money and you have a right to decide where you spend it. And you can make a choice to spend it in the right way. And you have a choice not to spend it to those who support genocide. The organizations that have, if I say the names, I don't know if someone is going to sue me or something, but we all know their names, and stop spending money on them. BDS.org is the site that will give you whole detail. There is an app that you can download on your phone and you can scan the product and see what they're doing in the background. Those are just the few actions that you can take. And finally, the action that I would humbly urge you to take, write to mayor, write to the city council. Tell them we attended this event. Tell them we are taxpayers, we are voters. We are the one because of you exist. We are the one who owns this city. We have a right to use the public facilities. And you have denied access to the public facility to a group that is peaceful, that was just using their right of expression. And they had been forced to use a private facility and they have been labeled as controversial. And we don't like that. We need answers and we demand that you provide an explanation and if you admit there is a fault, we need apology from every single individual who has been involved in this, including the CEO of the Belleville Library, who's the first one, Trevor Cross. Nothing personal, but he is the one who said no to me first, and followed by private organization. We can't blame them, they have choice, but it is the city property that we're trying to use, and we wanted to use public property, and we were denied access to it. Kindly write to them, win your words as strong as possible. I would be greatly and humbly appreciating your effort in this. Finally, do we still have someone on the Zoom? Okay.
Zoom is still
Yeah,
live.
I'd like to thank Mesa as well for holding the other end of this conversation. You want to have any closing comments?
I just want to thank you so much for the enormous effort to put this together. I mean, I'm very, very, very grateful for you being resilient and not giving up on this event. I'm thankful for everybody who showed up despite the multiple changes. And I'm just reflecting how important it is to do these events, you know, in community, to bring people together, to bridge the gaps between what's happening in Palestine and the local community, and how close we are and interconnected. So I want to thank you all. Please consider joining Doctors Against Genocide. We have weekly events, and we always host people from Gaza, from Palestine, and other communities that are affected by genocide. I'm supportive of all these actions that you mentioned, Shahid. I think you know, there's definitely power in numbers and power in collective action, and I really do hope that you all write to the library about what happened. So just want to thank you all. Thank you, Yiping, for showing up as well, and for all the speakers. Amy, learned so much from your presentation. That was wonderful. And of course, very grateful to Dr. Deirdre and the team in Gaza for showing up and for filling our hearts with hope and fuel for more courage. So thank you so much. I don't know if you want to give it for Amy to say something.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to everybody who attended. It really means a lot that you took some time out of your Saturday to come and get a chance to hear all of us speak. Thank you.
I think people are clapping, but I can't hear them. So thank you. Thank you, Ramadan Mubarak, to everyone serving, and thank you again for your solidarity. We appreciate it.
All right, everybody, you heard it. It's a wrap. Again, thanks from the bottom of my heart for coming here. It is a great gesture of support, not just for us, but for Dr. Yi, who's putting his life and his career online to supporting this cause, for which he has
making this happen despite the attempts to stop it. Thank you.
I must say a quote from a famous book: they make a plan and then he makes a plan, and he's the best of the planet. Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice rest of your day.